Testing. Hey guys, I think we're live. Having a hard time figuring this out so far. Yeah, it looks like we're live. Okay. What's up? We're just waiting for a few folks to jump on here. Had a crazy week. And about a couple videos. Been getting some haters, some crazy comments this week. So just a normal week, I guess. But yeah, if you're on here, feel free to put a question or two in the chat. We'll try to answer those. Most weeks we get a couple other pros in here with us, and they can help answer questions as well, even if it's something I don't know. I don't know everything. I just, try to spread what I do know. So yeah, if you have any heating and air questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. I've got a few things we're going to talk about tonight. Also, if you're joining us, please make sure you share where you are located. That always seems to help. And we like seeing where everyone's, located and, shouting out from. And we also did a little thing last week when we were wrapping up where folks shared who they use if they have a good heating and air company local to them. It seems like I know there's got to be some good companies down there, but it's just ironic here lately. I've had multiple people, I help folks on our guide, and I've had multiple people on there in the Dallas Fort Worth area asking for a good heating and air tech or company rather. And so if you are in that area and you know of a good company, feel free to shout them out. Because it's just weird. I've had a ton of folks lately asking for good companies in that area. So the company or the guy I'm helping right now on our guide he's doing new construction. So he's, he does not have a GC. He's doing it all himself, and he just needs a good heating and air company. He has mechanical drawings, which is, pretty unheard of, in our industry. A lot of residential stuff, they'll give you prints. They'll give the contractor prints and expect them to kind of draw up what they're going to do in the house. So Tech Junkies, welcome back. Welcome out, Tech Junkie. What's a typical acceptable room-to-room temperature difference? 0 is ideal, right? Hey, Ryan. Yeah, I mean, I guess that depends. I mean, I wouldn't be okay with any temperature difference, but I have to admit, I do have an area of my home that we have to either leave the door open because there's not enough return air in that part of the house. Otherwise it will get it's always ahead if there's not enough return air, if we don't leave the door open out rather. So I guess that would kind of depend. If it's a new construction, then I'm shooting for 0 if I can. But I did not do the heating and air in the house that I live in. Otherwise, I would like to think that we would not have this issue that we currently have. So, I mean, 0 is what you're shooting for, right? So, yeah, looks like we've jumped up to over 20 people in here. If you don't mind, share where you're located in the country. We always like seeing that. Jackie says, regarding sizing, would it be smart to use a 5-ton inverter variable AC system when proper sizing is 4-ton because of the variable speed feature? I don't know why you're going to pay more for the 5-ton over the 4-ton. So I'm not sure why you would want to oversize that, even though inverter systems do have the capability of ramping down. I would still size it accordingly. A lot of folks don't realize, now I can't say this for all, but a lot of inverter systems have the ability to also ramp up higher than what the actual rated capacity is. So a lot of inverter systems, it might say, it's a 4-ton on the model number, but it can actually, if you read through the specs, it has the capability of ramping up, higher than 48,000 BTUs. Now, I think that's more common with mini splits than with these conventional systems, but I don't think it's unheard of. So if you can give me a little context, Jackie, we can maybe go through why you might want to oversize it. Otherwise, I don't think it would be smart. I would put the size that it's meant to be there. So, that system can, there are going to be times when it does run wide open and cool the house quicker because it's, extreme temperatures outside. But other than that, you're going to spend more money to get the higher capacity. And other than that, I don't know any other reason why you would want to. Ryan says, for a typical furnace, what temperature should be coming out of the vents with ductwork that is normally insulated? I normally only see 105 to 115 degrees. Not sure if that's good or bad. I'm in North Carolina. For a typical furnace, what temperature should be coming out of the vents? So, Ryan, I would assume you mean heating, right? Because you're giving us some really high temperatures there. And I think it depends on what kind of system you have. I think that with a typical non-condensing furnace, so like an 80% furnace, you might see a little bit higher of a heat rise. You might be pushing 30, 40 degrees up towards 40. More with a condensing furnace, you're going to be closer to 30, I would say. So if it's going in the ductwork at 70 and you're in a heat mode, 30 to 40 degree heat rise, I would say is typical. Some of you guys up north that work on furnaces a whole lot more than I do, feel free to chime in on that. I know we do get some pros in here sometimes. So last week we were flooded with some pros. We had a bunch of heat and air guys in here, and they started talking heat and air stuff, which is pretty uncommon for my channel since it's directed more towards homeowners. But, it was good. We were able to riff a little bit and share some knowledge. In Northern Virginia, shout out to Virginia. I'm in Virginia. Just had my upstairs system replaced. As part of that, the company also recommended a radiant heat barrier be something I consider as a large efficiency play. Would appreciate your thoughts. Sorry if I don't say your name correctly, Naresh. Hopefully I'm saying that okay. Radiant barrier. Wonder what they're talking about there. Radiant barrier. Can you give me a little context on that? Are you talking about are they talking about in the attic, a radiant barrier up there? Or is this something else, some other product, some sort of barrier, radiant barrier? If you're talking about the attic, I'd have to defer to your pro. I don't know your house. Every house is different. I know a lot of the houses in our area are doing all kinds of different things to the attics to try to alleviate some of the issues, especially when their systems are located in the attic. So maybe that's what you're talking about. When you do have a heating and air system located in the attic and it's unconditioned, that system at times, especially where I live and further south, it's sitting literally in an oven. I mean, that system can only do but so much. And it's located in a very, some of these attics, 150, 160 degrees is not unheard of. And, sometimes even higher. So you've got your system is supposed to provide you AC doing all it can located. It's just like putting an ice cube in an oven. It's eventually going to melt, right? It can only do but so much. Johnny says, if a proper load calculation was done, always size recommended to that. If a proper load calculation was done, always size recommended to that. So he must be answering someone else's question there. Probably the 5-ton, 4-ton question. Ryan says 2 stages, 90%er. So yeah, I mean, I would be happy with a 30-degree heat rise. I mean, if you're having trouble with it keeping up with the house, that might be a different story. But with a condensing high efficiency furnace, you're not going to see some of the heat rise temperatures that you see on a 80% furnace or especially an oil furnace, those jokers can have a 60-degree heat rise at times. 50, 60 degrees is not that, unheard of. So Jonold, hopefully I'm saying that right, is asking, as a Daikin dealer, are you authorized to sell Amana products? I think if I needed to get my hands on an Amana a product, I might be able to through a different dealer, but my Daikin distributor does not even sell Amana, so I wouldn't be able to buy it from them. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I've had to get, we had to get an air handler one time, but you guys that know anything about Daikin, Amana, Goodman, a lot of their products are, cross-referenced. So at times it's the same stuff, different sticker. It just depends on what you're doing and so on. But to answer your question, my Daikin dealer does not sell Amana, so I couldn't get it if I wanted it. That's good pronunciation. Thank you. Essentially a rubberized foil, yes, in the attic above the insulation. Yeah, Naresh, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not I don't claim to be an energy expert. These guys that are these building scientists and these new trades that are coming out, I don't claim to know what they know. I know how to fix your air conditioner, but I would defer to them. I do know that, again, a lot of these attics are quite hot, and anything you can do to kind of, insulate better, maybe that's why they're saying that. I will say, get multiple opinions. My best friend here locally, he had 2 different companies come in and give him recommendations to fix an issue with a part of his upstairs. He had a part of his upstairs that was just, didn't matter how much AC we dumped in there. It just was hot in there all the time. And so he was getting, opinions on, the insulation and things like that from different companies. And it wasn't until a company came in with an actual thermal camera that they got to the root issue and were able to give him a permanent fix to the problem he was having. And the concerning part of that is the companies that were coming in and just kind of throwing Band-Aids on it or throwing, mud on the wall, hoping that it would fix it. Their solutions to the problem would not have fixed the root issue, and he would not have known that. So I would recommend getting more than one opinion on that matter. Johnny says, I usually oversize a half a ton for any attic system. Yeah, just every house is different, so let's see. Looks like I just switched to the wrong setup here. There we go. So yeah, feel free. Looks like we've got over 20 people in here. Please share where you're from, where you're located. Love seeing that. Share that in the chat. And then also, if you have any heating and air questions, I was looking for, I think his name, who's the guy that told me how to fix my microphone last week? I think his name was Gary, maybe. I was hoping he would be in here so I could tell him that I tested his theory and he was correct, that the microphone, I was using it incorrectly last week. So Johnny's in Minnesota representing. I think the Timberwolves just lost in the semifinals, which is tough. They've got to get some better guards. They've got some tall guys, but that one guy, that young guy, can only do but so much. So got it. One from Arizona, Carl. Carl, well, how hot is it down there? I bet it's getting quite warm. You're probably seeing already temperatures over 100 degrees. Emery says, is it possible for the smallest sized system to be oversized? And what do you do if that is the case? Is it possible? So, Emery, if you can give me a little more context, I'm trying to, I'm just guessing that you're saying that you have more than one system in the home and the smallest one is oversized. So maybe you're having to account for that when sizing the others, maybe. And that would be quite a pickle if that is the case. Not bad yet. I'm 5,000 elevation. Nice. Sheldon, I am having a hard stop from a train condenser It makes a noise like a knock when it cycles off. Any experience with that issue? Sheldon, see if a soft start might fix your issue. If you've got a single stage system, you might be able to look at that. You also might want to have the run capacitor tested to see if if it's getting low on microfarad rating. They do go bad after a while. But the other thing I would look at is maybe a product like AC Renew made by New Calgon or Diversitex Boost Juice. They're both lubricants that will sometimes quiet those compressors down if that's the problem. Have a pro look at it. You're saying it's making a knock when it cycles off, and I can only assume that's the compressor, but without actually looking at the system. Johnny says we are used to being one and done in the playoffs of any sport. That's funny. I'm in Virginia, so yeah, we have our lot of lows, more than when they say ups and downs, we have more downs, right? Emery says I'm talking about the lowest capacity system. Okay, so let me go back to your original question. Is it possible that the smallest size system to be oversized, and what you do if that's the case? Yeah. Oh, so I see what you're saying. Yes, that is possible. That's part of the reason that you see folks converting to other means. So, there have been homes where we've seen in the past, rooms upstairs, and they would put a 1.5 ton system, AC or heat pump system up there. And that was actually oversized, but it was the smallest thing you could buy. So we usually try to look towards other solutions, such as, those mini split air handlers that only have the, 4 drops, things like that. Something inverter, ductless, something like that. So that way it's not as big of an issue. I can tell you that we looked at a room the other day, and I explained to the homeowner, look, the smallest mini split I can sell you is a 9,000 BTU 1-to-1. And I know there's smaller ones out there of other brands, but that's the smallest one we can sell. And, I explained to them, you've got to leave your remote in auto, because if you turn it to, even the lowest fan speed, you're going to hurt the dehumidification on that. Naresh says, may also have to replace system in rental property I have. Compressor is 3.5 ton. Evaporator label says 4 ton. Is that okay, or should the inside and outside always match? So one thing they used to do more common years ago, but we still see it to this day, is we will see at times folks oversize the indoor coil to get a higher SEER rating. It's a larger coil, so the airflow across that coil is meant to be a little more efficient. And so it gives the system, a system that might be a 14 SEER makes it a 15 SEER, So no, that's not uncommon. I would just make sure whatever you replace it with, regardless of what that indoor coil size says that it is, I would worry more about the AHRI match. Make sure that it is an AHR match. Ask for the certificate if you have to. Ryan says, can you install a soft start on an inverter system? I don't think so. That would defeat the purpose. Essentially, an inverter system already has the capabilities that a soft start offers. Jack says, I'm in Oregon. Weird weather. Yeah, you guys in the Pacific Northwest, y'all get some of that clammy temperatures that no one sees, where it's super humid and super cold, right? Most folks, when they see cold temperatures, it's more drier air. So you guys up in the Northwest, y'all get that, that Pacific, moist air coming off of the ocean there. Past week, switching between heating and cooling for the house, shut down oil heat for the garage shop, and went back to electric for the season. Sounds good. Ryan says, do you recommend a sound blanket to put on the compressor to help with the noise? Do those sound blankets jackets cause the compressor to overheat or any other damage? I've never heard of them causing damage. In fact, a lot of brands install those blankets on the compressor from the factory. So do I recommend them? Well, they do quiet them down. I don't know that I have ever recommended them to a customer that did not have one. I've never said to a customer, "Hey, we can quiet this down by getting you a, compressor blanket." But a part of that is, you sell it to them, right? So you order it, and you put it on, and you charge them a certain amount of money to do that, and then they may still have false expectations on how much quieter the system's going to be. And then they feel like they may have wasted money. So it's kind of tough, when you recommend things like that, when it's not an actual fix, right? If it's a loud system. Emery says, question, is it code in your area to put in a CO detector with every install? I've never heard of that being code here, but I can tell you that it's a big deal. I have customers that we will tell them to go get one. Don't go to sleep tonight without it. If you have a gas appliance in your home, especially we have customers that have their gas furnace, or even I've seen tankless water heaters located down in the crawl space beneath the living area. And that's a huge safety issue. I tell them, don't go to sleep tonight without one. And it's not even something I sell. So it's not a sales tactic. I'm not trying to sell you something. Go to your local hardware store right now and get you a carbon monoxide detector. All right. Well, until a couple more questions come through, let me ask you guys a question. And this is open for participation. Please answer, and you might be able to help somebody else out. Question tonight. First question is, what kind of filters do you currently have? Do you just have the normal disposable ones? Do you have the old school fiberglass? Do you have the pleated ones? Do you have maybe an upgraded, some sort of whole house home filter, or an electronic filter? Please share that in the comments section. What kind of filter do you have? And, have you thought about upgrading? Do you not want to upgrade for one reason or another? Love to hear your answers on that. Jackie says, I'm in Southwest Florida. Any Daikin company installers do you recommend? Unfortunately, I don't know anybody down there. Wish I did. My wife and I joke all the time saying we want to move to Florida, but we'll see if that ever happens. As life goes on, you start to drop anchors, right? One of those being we had our daughter, and she's starting school soon, and you just start to drop anchors. Tech Junkie says, actually, everyone should have a low level CO detector. Emery says, by the way, I live in Texas. Nice. What part of Texas do you live, Emery? I use a whole house filter. I have washable filters in our filter grills. And then in addition to that, to my main downstairs unit, we have an Aprilaire whole house filter with just the regular media. It's not an electronic or electrostatic filter. It's just a regular media filter. I feel like you've told me that before, Emery. College Station, Texas. Let's see how close that is. I used to work for a company that, okay, so you're kind of like right there in the middle of Houston, Austin, and just south of Waco. So yeah. I used to work for a company that we took care of a lot of student housing, like apartment complexes. And I want to say they had a property in College Station. So I'm assuming there's a college there. It's called College Station, and we had a building there. So I'm assuming there is a college there. Ryan says, I just bought some carbon filters for my return vents to help with odors. Merv 8. Let us know how that goes, Ryan. Do you have a lot of odors? Do you have a smoker in the house, or why did you do that? That's interesting. Carl says, I have a 1-inch pleated filter. I change it out 4 times a year, so every quarter. Interesting. We're home to Texas A&M University, one of the biggest universities. There you go. Well, that answers that. I remember that property because the guy that they had sent there to take care of it, to be the facilities manager, had called me a few times for some help on things. They had a steam boiler system, which he had just never seen one before. So he was, out of his element a little bit. So my wife and I just went to Waco a couple months ago, and I guess that's home to Baylor University. So there's a lot of colleges down there. Let's see. Jessica says, I have a 5-ton unit, 2,000 square foot house, but my bedroom stays hot. Had the unit checked out, and they say it's running fine. Bill is really high in the summer. Jessica, first of all, where are you located? Second of all, usually let me ask you this. The room that stays hot, is it hot in the summer only, or is it hot all year long? So even in the winter time when the house is heating, is that room hotter than the rest? Emery says Waco is 1.5 hours away from us. We went to a place, we had flew into the Dallas area, and then we had rented a car, and we were on our way down to Waco, and we stopped at this place, and they had the best barbecue. I'm not even a barbecue guy, and I mean, that stuff was just amazing. Texas barbecue is just, it is some good stuff. Ryan says cooking odors, and it seems like the exhaust fan for the stove isn't the best at removing the cooking smells. That's a good, interesting. I might look into that myself, because we don't have a very good exhaust system in our kitchen. So maybe that might be something good for me to look at, actually. Johnny says, that sounds like a duct problem. All year it's warmer. So maybe it's not a duct problem. If it were a duct issue, so here's the deal. So imagine if that room has, the ductwork is too small. So the rest of the house is this, and that room is this, right? It's real small, and you're not getting enough airflow to that room. So it's getting hot, right? And that would be a duct issue, right? You'd need someone to look at, is the duct too small going to that room? Do I need to add a duct? Do I need to add more return to that space? I've got a ductwork issue, right? And if it became wintertime in that same scenario, if that space is too small when, the rest of the house is heating up really fast, but that room stays cold, then you do have a ductwork issue. You're not getting enough airflow or enough return air, or something is wrong with that. But if you're saying that it stays warmer the entire year, so in heating, cooling, all times, that room just seems to be warmer than the rest of the house, you could have a zoning issue. And so imagine a 2-story house where heat always rises. That is a lot of times a zoning issue. It's not a ductwork issue, because imagine if you were to oversize the ducts going to the upstairs. So you're dumping all this cool air in the upstairs, and heat's rising, but you've got it nice and comfortable and everything is sized right. But then it switched to wintertime. Heat still rises in the wintertime, and you now are dumping all this hot air. Your heating system is now turned on. And so I know some of you are saying she's from Florida. She's probably not in heating mode as much, but that if you're telling me it's hot all year long, even when you're in heating mode, if you're, turned on the heat and it's warmer in that room, that leads me to believe you might have more of a zoning issue, not necessarily a ductwork issue. So whoever told you everything's fine, it's not going to be an issue with the system more times than not. It's something is wrong with either the zoning or the ductwork or something like that. And you need to get someone that's going to look at that stuff and get to the bottom of the issue. Bare minimum, if you just cannot get to the bottom of it, and you just keep fighting this fight, and you just you can't get it remedied, then you can maybe look at doing something extreme when it comes to zoning, such as adding, say, a mini split to that space so you could get maximum comfort. Jack says, always had electric until current house. First thing I did was buy a CO detector since have gas heat, since added them to garage and shop after installing oil. The electric costs too much when cold. Good enough. Jessica says it's the room farthest from the unit, opposite side of the house, even thought about putting a video unit in the room. Not sure what that means. But yeah, you just need to have someone that, that knows what they're doing, that will, look at the, the ductwork, if there is zoning, if you need to add zoning, and just, get to the root of the problem. It's not going to be a problem with the system and the operation of the system, especially if the rest of the house is, cooling just fine. Sheldon says, can you comment on UV lights and is it effective? Yes. UV lights, I am a big believer. I used to work for a guy that when they first came out, he would always say, I'm just not sure. They might be snake oil. And when I started my business, I wasn't sure either, but I had a customer and he had an evaporator coil. It was one of those old M coils. And so it was like the letter M, if you can imagine, like that. And so because of that, there were lower parts of the coil that no matter how hard we cleaned, even we could have just taken that whole entire coil outside and sprayed it down. I don't think we would have gotten every bit of the gunk, this black gunk that had caked up in that coil. So we cleaned it the best we could. And then I sold the first UV light I had ever sold at that time. And I became a believer because we went back 6 months later to do his maintenance, to clean the coils and treat the drains and check refrigerant levels, all the stuff you do on a good tune-up. And the coil was shiny as a nickel. I became a believer that day. And so, a good UVC light, now that I know more, about all the things that it does. But, back then they were just kind of new. Nobody knew. And that I became a believer that day. Watch Television says Daikin fit $11,000 quote 1,250 square feet versus 13,500 Train inverter HVAC. Is Train worth the extra? Well, it depends on what you're looking at. So the Train, if it's one of those new 19 SEER or their top of the line 20 SEER, you kind of get, you are going to get a higher SEER rating. You're going to get a more efficient system, but it's going to be much larger. And obviously you're spending more money than you would on the fit. So I think it just kind of boils down to, are you going to live in the house for a while? The company that quoted the fit, maybe see, if maybe you like their warranty, the fit does come with a better warranty than Train typically. So if that is something that interests you, maybe see if the Daikin company can compete with the Train price or the Train quote and see if they can quote you the higher SEER, unit. So you're comparing apples to apples there. Johnny says, she's from Florida. Emery says, is there a limit to how many return vents you can install? I think in general, no, there's no limit. I know out in the Midwest, there are guys that add returns to each and every single room. That's not something we do here in Virginia typically, but I think, ultimately, no, there's not a limit. Naresh says, I like the carbon filter idea too. Need to try that. Putting aside benefits of bacteria and virus killing, do UV lights being placed over the coils help improve the life of the system? So I think in general, the answer to your question would be yes. So the cleaning of the air and cleaning of the evaporator coil will make that system last. It won't have to work as hard is the general idea. When things are not clean and it's having to work harder, you're putting, maybe it could be argued you're putting more wear and tear on that system. Some of you guys are probably like, man, is this guy doing a commercial for UV lights tonight? Does he have a sponsor for a UV light? Is it somebody sponsoring him? No, but if you want to sponsor me, if you're a UV light company, give me a call. Ryan says, what side are the windows on your house? I had the same issue. Had to use blackout curtains to help block UV rays from heating up the house. Jessica says, window unit, LOL. Do UV lights produce ozone? I don't know if this can be said of all of them, but I do know that some of them don't produce ozone. Jessica said, also, my unit is one that has electric, air, and gas heat all in one. Heat works great and cheap to run. But when I had my unit checked, the AC guy tried to talk me into getting away from the gas heat. Interesting. I wonder why he tried to get you away from it. I mean, especially if it's cheaper. I can tell you that where I live, there's only you have to go down in the metropolitan areas down in Williamsburg and areas like that to get natural gas. But up where I live, it's kind of rural, and most of the folks use propane heat. So propane is significantly higher in price typically than natural gas. And because of the fluctuation in pricing, a lot of folks will look at maybe going electric because, how volatile the price is on propane. LP gas, has its ups and downs, just like gasoline. Jack says, family room in our house should have more supply for heat and cool. Leaving fan on low all the time compensates. However, I learned in extreme temperatures to switch the fan to auto or risk the coil to freeze. So leaving the fan on is causing the coil to freeze. Interesting. Emery says, question, can an improperly installed system void its warranty? That is a tough question. I think the answer is yes, it's certainly possible. Kind of depends on who installed it and what they did to improperly install that system. But I've seen a lot of crazy installed systems that you would think would not be covered under warranty, and the companies do cover them. So just kind of depends. Johnny says, once you go electric heat, you will soon realize it was a mistake. Johnny must live up north. That sounds like something one of you folks up north would say. We have customers that'll move down here to Virginia from up north, and they love their gas heat. They don't want electric. So we've got over 30 people in here. Good little crowd. If you got a heating and air question, feel free to put it in there, put it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to throw another question at you guys. Have you ever had your ductwork cleaned? Duct cleaning. What are your thoughts on that? And did it improve anything? Did you think it was necessary? And maybe even share how much you paid and whether or not you feel like it was worth it. So let's chat about duct cleaning. Johnny says, once you go electric heat, you will soon. Oh, I already read that. Ryan says, have you installed geothermal heat pump systems before? If so, do you recommend open or closed loop? So I have not. I have not done a lot of geothermal. I cut my teeth on systems in commercial atmospheres first. So I learned boilers before I ever learned how a heat pump worked. I learned cooling towers, things like that. And then I have a few customers that have geothermal systems, but we've just never installed one or had to. So I don't have a recommendation on that. Maybe if there's some other pros in here and they want to share what their thoughts are on open or closed loop on that geothermal. Emery says, no, but I plan to have them cleaned. Johnny says, I opened my power bill and water bill at the same time and got shocked. Jack says, not enough airflow when inverter ramps to 4-ton if fan on low. Oh, interesting. So you have a system that you're telling it to only run low. Interesting. Most systems, even if you tell the fan, even on an inverter system, the system's going to be able to ramp down, to equate for that. So that's interesting. Carl says, no, I haven't. And Jessica says, in Florida are, okay, so she's asking a question. Yeah, just to point out the duct cleaning thing, we started offering duct cleaning for one reason alone, and that was because before I started our company, I worked for a company that did not provide it. It was almost considered, I don't want to say snake oil, but it was just not something that we did a lot of. And a lot of the companies around us that did provide that service, they were actually carpet cleaning businesses that, oh, by the way, they also cleaned ductwork. And so a lot of heating and air companies, because, there's a lot of folks that'll say, well, clinical tests, when they've tested air, when before the ducts were clean versus after, there's never been, any proven science to show that the air was significantly cleaner after having the ducts clean. But a lot of folks simply just want, if nothing else, the peace of mind, knowing that the air coming through their ductwork is not being blown across a bunch of dirt and a lot of the other stuff that can get in ductwork at times, right? One I can think of is dead mice. That's something that could possibly get in there. And so we started offering it because I had customers that had these, what I would consider an unqualified person opening up their heating and air systems to provide a tune-up. In addition to cleaning the ductwork, they would clean the heating and air system. So we started providing duct cleaning after that. And so we've been doing it for a number of years now. And, so that's interesting. Ryan says, I've never had the ductwork clean. Not sure if they were cleaned by the previous homeowners. Jessica says, in Florida, are attic fans worth it if you have adequate vents in the roof? I think it just depends. I mean, if your attic is getting super hot, they make solar attic fans now that, because they run off the sun, they only run during the day. And, folks do. I've had customers install them and say that they've seen a difference in their utility bills because of it. So I don't live in Florida, but I can only imagine y'all probably get hotter attics than we do, especially if houses are built relatively the same. With these attics that are unconditioned above the living space, some of those attics can get quite hot, Andrew says, do you see any problems with adding a compressor sound blanket to a unit to quiet it down some? Our unit is right outside our bedroom. I don't want it to cause excessive heat buildup. Thanks. Andrew, I personally, to be honest with you, I don't know if you're the same person that asked this earlier or if you just ironically happen to be another person asking about the sound blankets. I have never sold one. I've never, now if the system came with one from the factory and it was intended to have one, I have ordered blankets to replace the one that was there, but I've never added one to a system that did not currently have one. I think the question would become, if your contractor, if you talk to your local contractor, have them check with the manufacturer and see if it's okay to add a sound blanket, or if there would be a heat issue. Compressors do, have heat that builds up in there and they'll get warm. And so sound blankets would obviously, become a blanket on that compressor. So I would have them check with the manufacturer, make sure it's okay before you do it. I'm pretty sure they make aftermarket ones that you can add on there. And, that's I'm sorry to hear that it's that loud. Make sure if and when the day comes that you have to replace it, you go inverter and you'll never have to worry about that again. Watch Television says, do you find older 10 plus years ductwork leak or have holes, or are they intact? Yeah, I think the older the ductwork we see, if you were to do a duct blast test, I mean, there's brand new ductwork that has issues, and folks will do a duct blast test and find that they're leaking. So yeah, I would say in general, the older the ductwork, the more they leak. Jack says, I won't allow my return ducts to be cleaned. I fear the flex in the attic being damaged. All supply is rigid. That's a really good point, Jack. So we have gone into homes and the customer want duct cleaning, and we tell them no, that your ductwork is brittle, and us getting our system in there, we could cause an issue, and we can replace them, but cleaning them is actually going to cause more issues than you currently have. Carl says compressor heat is dictated by the suction line gas temperature. Andrew says, thank you. You're welcome. Carl says, for the most part. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things there. I mean, I think as time goes on and, compressors are doing their thing, I feel like they don't work as well, and those valves are starting to get older, and, things are just heat up a little more than they used to. I could be wrong on that, but I'm just saying. Might be just all in my head. Yeah, so let's see. I've got another question for you guys. Let's see. Have you had any recent heating and air repairs done on your current system, and how much did it cost? And if you care to share where you're located in the country, thought it might be good if some of you guys have, had some repairs done. You can kind of see what other parts of the country, what they're charging to have certain services done, certain repairs done. You might feel like your prices are high until you see what others are paying, right? Ryan says, what do you think of products like AeroSeal for sealing ductwork to stop leaks? I've heard some really good feedback on AeroSeal. AeroSeal has sent me emails before, and we've looked at maybe becoming a dealer, and I've just never gone down that road, but I've heard some really good things about them, especially when folks are failing duct blast tests. Being able to get in there with a product like that, and the success that they've had. Emery says, how do you measure the temperature of the suction line? They make little clamps. You just clamp it on there and it gives you the temperature. Emery says, I'm having preventive maintenance done on May 25th. Nice. Yeah, we're almost done with our tune-ups. We got started right around, I would say, the end of March. We started doing a few, especially those customers that really needed it. It was actually a little cold, so we couldn't, some of the systems we had to come back after it warmed up to do all of our measurements on the refrigerant. But we went ahead and cleaned the coils and stuff. But we're almost done with all of our customers that are on contracts with us. Ryan says, I had a micro air soft starter installed for $125 that I bought myself. Nice. Carl says, about 3 years ago, a hailstorm took out my roof and R22 AC system to the tune of $27,000. Wow. I hope the insurance company helped out a little bit on that. That would be quite a penny there. Carl, I'm trying to remember where you said, I think you're the one that said you were in Minnesota. Those prices are that would be pretty high, to be honest, in our area. Even to get a new roof put on plus the heat and air unit, but maybe there was more to it than I think. The AC was $10K. Okay, interesting. The rest says, just installed a Carrier 3-ton single stage unit plus 2-stage 80% furnace in Northern Virginia for $8,500. I think that's pretty good for Northern Virginia, pal. I don't know what the SEER rating is on that, but even at minimum, if it's a, what is the minimum now? 14.2 SEER 2, I think, is the minimum now. Even if you got the minimum, that's a really good price. Jack says, I spent $16,000 having replaced the system. Our air cleaning system was great for the summer fire air in 2020, just in time B. Yeah, 16K. Wow. Carl's in Arizona. I'm sorry, Carl. Well, that explains why the system was on the roof. You guys out in the West, y'all have all these units located on the roof. That's not that's not a thing on our side of the country where y'all have all those units located on the roof like that. Here in Virginia, nobody has anything on the roof like that. Not for homes. So that's makes sense now. Jessica says Florida coils replaced $2,500. Outside unit replaced $3,000. Yeah, Florida is going to be one of the lower markets. You guys get probably better pricing than anybody, partly because the there's no shortage of heat and air guys, down there. So you've got Chuck in a truck willing to do it for a lot less, and so everybody has to stay competitive, I think. It's just a guess. I've never worked in Florida. Just, from the outside looking in, Florida has some of the lowest rates in the country when it comes to heat and air. Ryan says, I also had an elbow on my furnace get repaired for $120. It was leaking and had to be cut out and glued. Stop the leak. Nice. Yeah, it seems like all the prices you're getting are pretty reasonable, Ryan. Jessica says, eye opener. I'm not complaining anymore. Yeah, I help folks on our guide, and well, let's see. So I was helping somebody in North Carolina today and somebody in Texas today. And their prices, I told the guy in Texas that, I was like, if you lived here, the bill you just got, you probably would have spent about, $4,000 less. And he's like, well, I got multiple quotes. I made sure it was a competitive price. And I just told him some areas are, higher cost to live in, or, whatever, for whatever reason, supply and demand might play a role in that. If you can't find anybody else to do the work and somebody's giving you an outrageous bid, and, but yeah, it seems like the further south I go, the more reasonable prices get. And then the further north I go, when I'm helping folks with our guide, the further north I go, the higher the prices get. So I've helped a few folks on our guide in Long Island, and, they have some decent high rates. I helped one guy in Boston, really high rates there, for heat and air work. What is the labor rate for your area? Standard rates for non-emergency or after hours? I have no idea. I've never checked to see what other people charge on that. We double our rates, and then we still have our discounts for our VIP customers. But that's just because, I used to just do time and a half, and, my guys, they were working really hard, and I would get these customers that they would have like 3 systems in their house, and it wasn't really an emergency, but they were like, well, it's just a little bit more, you're just charging time and a half. Yeah, y'all go ahead and come on out tonight at 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday night. And so I doubled our rates just to take care of my guys better. It's not a greed thing. I just wanted to take care of our guys. Johnny says, what is the labor rate for your air? Oh yeah, same question. Jack says, a friend of mine is enjoying his new Daikin heat pump with gas train for backup. He wanted to stay trained, but costly here. So he has a mismatched system. I don't think Daikin's going to beat you up on it, but some brands would void the warranty if you mismatched them. I was listening to a podcast today where a guy that, I'm not going to mention his name, but he's kind of a, he's influential in our industry. Let's put it that way. And he was saying that he thinks it's possible that there could become a day where, these folks that like to just buy the outdoor unit and then they mismatch things or whatever, and all the issues that they can create, especially when people don't know what they're doing. He thinks there may come a time where you won't be able to buy just the outdoor unit. You'll have to buy a complete system that's matched. So that way, everything is, if nothing else, it's meant to be matched with one another. I don't know. I think it'll be hard to enforce that, especially like with warranty issues and things like that. But that's what he was saying on this podcast I was listening to. Ryan says, North Carolina has some of the highest rates for AC replacements. I've gotten quotes from $15,000 to $30,000 for a split system on top models for multiple brands. I'm in Charlotte, crazy expensive. I agree. The couple of folks that I've helped in North Carolina, I was actually a little surprised as well. As I said, usually the further south I go, the more rates go down typically. And I think North Carolina might be the exception to that rule. At least in the few folks that I've helped with our guide, I would say I have been surprised at how reasonable some of the rates are in Maryland, because I just had this thought that, that their rates would be a lot higher than Virginia and North Carolina. And I think North Carolina is probably beating them. But I will say I have a technician that works for us that worked in North Carolina for a number of years. North Carolina has some very strict rules and codes when it comes to heating and air, that you have to jump through certain hoops. And, maybe that's why. Maybe that plays a role in all this. They've got to do a few more steps when they do certain things than the average company, so they've got to account. Emery says, do the systems have to be matched? Well, they should be. I don't think they have to be. For the longest time, back when we had R22 systems, it was actually not that uncommon, for folks to mismatch things. I'm trying to get a few more years out of the furnace, so let's just slap a different outdoor unit out there, and you could make it work. But now these days, with all the different things going on, the metering devices and the refrigerants and things that are different these days, they really should all match, especially for warranties, but also for performance, efficiency, and such. Jessica says, yep, I found out when I bought my home, had a 5-ton inside and a 4-ton outside, and the warranty would not cover it. And it caused issues where the outside unit was running too hard. Don't do it. Interesting. I'm very surprised to hear that. I'm Jessica, do you know what brand that was? Because I've never, I see, in fact, new systems today, if you were to install a 20 SEER, a high SEER model unit of multiple brands, 5-ton high SEER unit, more times than not, the indoor, the air handler is going to be rated higher than the outdoor unit. 4-ton, if you do a 4-ton outdoor unit, a lot of times they'll match it with a 5-ton indoor with a 5-ton air handler. So yeah, that's interesting. I'd love to hear which brand that was. Jack says the installer on Mismatch had to eat extra controls to make Train and Daikin work together. Don't know the details yet. Interesting. Emery says, how tough are the codes in Virginia? I would say we're somewhere in the middle, because I've heard stories of how others, especially the more I help folks with our guide, I'll hear how things are done in other states. And I'd say we're somewhere in the middle. I've heard of some states, they'll put you in jail if you are doing stuff you're not licensed to do. I've never heard of that happening in Virginia. You open yourself to civil litigation but I've never heard of someone being put in jail over it. So that's, but there are states that are that strict. Jack says, if I need to change out, I prefer to change all. It's good. Jessica says Linux. Yeah, that's interesting. Good old Linux and their warranties again. I've been hard on Linux because they made it to where if you want to check your warranty, you can't if you're the homeowner. I could be wrong. If you go to their website, maybe they've fixed it. I would be surprised if they fixed it because of little old me. But I've done a few videos calling them out because they made it to where only professionals, you have to have some sort of login to check the warranties on a system. The problem with that is, and the reason I have a problem with it, is a lot of heating and air companies lie. They'll tell the homeowner that they're no longer under warranty so they can charge more money for a repair, when in reality they are claiming the warranty, and so they're kind of double dipping there. And so I'm not saying that's happening a whole lot. Rich says test. He's in our Facebook, watching us on Facebook. We see you, Rich. You're not going to show up on the live chat because that's just from the YouTube, but I'll see your messages. So yeah, that's that. I call them out sometimes. Ryan says, can a communicating furnace work with a non-communicating AC or thermostat? Or once you go communicating, everything has to communicate to work? Yes, the second one. If you go with a communicating system, then usually everything has to be communicating. Now, there are systems out there that can be either or, meaning that, they have furnaces, they have air handlers, and I think even some of our outdoor units, you can set it up to work with a regular thermostat or with a communicating thermostat. So I've never been a fan of Linux, Johnny says. No comment, Johnny. That's what I'll say. Jessica says, curious, don't know about other states, but in Florida, we have to cage our outside units due to thefts. People cut the copper and ruin the unit. Do other states have that issue? Jessica, what? You were just sharing all kinds of crazy stuff. So we have that in one city local to me. I have seen that. But it's not, I don't think it's code though. But in Florida we have to cage our units. So yeah, I don't think you're saying it's code, but you're saying you have to do it, otherwise someone will steal it. Yeah, we have one city near us where it's become a thing. Where we're seeing more and more people do that. I have not seen that so much in Williamsburg, and really not so much in Richmond, although I've heard of people offering it in Richmond. But yeah, so but I have heard of it being a thing down in Newport News, which is near us, kind of near us, but just over an hour from us. My wife has texted me. She says, "Are you still on your live?" Yes, I am. It's not a code requirement. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, we are going to wrap up in just a moment, guys. If you do have any questions that are heating and air related, please share those in a chat. We also will be back next week at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here again. So please join me every week. I'm trying to grow this up a little bit and, get some stuff out there. I didn't have as many pros on this week. Last week, it seemed like I had like 10 guys on here that were all heating and air pros, which is kind of cool. So, all right. Johnny says Bryant Carrier does not need the communicating control with the modulating furnace to work, but do need the control to use the modulating features to the furnace. That makes sense. Kendall Brown is on our Facebook, says, do you think inverter units save money? Yes, I do. Jack says, after the second theft, my dentist had to cage and alarm it to keep insurance. Interesting. I can see the insurance company saying that, saying, hey, we're not buying another one of these unless you do something to stop this. Hey, thank you guys. Some of you are saying some kind things. I appreciate your kind words. We are going to wrap up in just a moment. So again, if you have any more questions, please share those. I I was going to share one last story, but we're going to save that for next week. Before you guys head out, I see some of you have already started to sign out. Do me a favor, wherever you're located, if you have a heating and air company that you know and love, that they've been good for one reason or another, please feel free to give them a shout out. And Emery, I will answer that question in just a second. But for the rest of you folks, please share if you have a local company, and also share where they are located or where you're located. So if somebody happens to be in your area that watches this, they'll know that there is a good company out there. So feel free to share your a good company that you know. Emery, how does an inverter system work? Well, without getting too technical, essentially, instead of a single stage system would have an on and off. So just like a light switch, there's either going to be on and it's running at full capacity, or it's off. And then there are systems that are staged. So instead of having, on or off, there are systems that are staged. So you might have an off, on, and it might only run at 70% capacity. And then you might have, where your second stage runs at 100% capacity. And some of those stage systems have multiple stages. Inverter systems have a lot of in between. They can ramp up, they can ramp down, depending on how hot or cold it is that day, and so on. Jacob says, how do you feel about R410A flares? I have a few properties installed by different companies. I think they all last about 5 years. Is that true? I think if installed properly, they should last longer than that, pal. I've seen gas fitting. I've seen gas connections. Of course, gas isn't quite as high of pressure, but I've seen them that were decades old. So we have flare fittings on some of our mini splits that are older than 5 years. So, I don't know how long they last, but I would think longer than 5 years for sure. Okay, so we're just going to wrap up with you guys shouting out these great companies. Jacob says, I love my company, HVAC Ready LLC, based in Teaneck, New Jersey. Nice. Ryan says, do exposed 2x4s and plywood below the air handler return invite problems? It just depends. I would need a little more context than that, pal. Do exposed 2x4s. When you say exposed, below the air handler return. Yeah, I'm not sure what exactly you're saying there. I would need a little more context, but save that for next week. We're going to wrap up here. Ryan says unlimited residential air, Charlotte, North Carolina metro area. So shout out to Unlimited. Johnny says Elite Cool and Heat in Pine River, Minnesota. Shout out to those guys. Del Air in Central Florida in Orlando. So shout out to Del Air. Ryan says also drywall being used as part of the return air duct. Yeah, I see that. As long as I see that sometimes, as long as the air going through the system is filtered before it goes through the system, I do see returns that are built in cavities sometimes there's not an actual return duct. Kendall Brown says, do you think an inverter system will have trouble with 3 zones? No, we just installed an inverter system last week that had 3 zones. So as long as they're installed right, inverter systems should actually work better with zoning than a single stage system that's starving for air, right? Rich Bernstein says, ever hear of hyperheat heat pump that works down to negative 22 degrees? Just got a sales pitch on one to replace my leaking central AC and baseboard heat. Yeah, so hyperheat is, it just depends on what exactly the system you're talking about. But hyperheat, I believe, is a trademark term used by Mitsubishi and their systems. That's for their systems that can work at low ambient temperatures. Jacob says, my R22 units are going strong after 15 years or so. It's just weird. Nice. Sheldon, I am in Orlando, Florida. I had a client in Virginia picking up a 5-ton 16 SEER heat pump system, and she demanded a 20 kW heat strip from your experience in that area. Is the heat pump capable? Yeah, I've seen systems with 20 kW heat kits before. You have to pull two 60 amp circuits typically for that. But man, she demanded it. Man, you better be careful working for her. She's already making demands. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. We are going to wrap up now. Feel free to, again, drop any more companies that you know that are good in your area down in the chat and where they're located. Shout out to those good companies out there. And we will be back next week at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So, if you could figure that out, if you're in a different time zone, and we'll be back next Tuesday. So y'all have a great week, and we'll see you then. Take care.